Hello, soldering is an important method when handling electronics, and that's what today's video will be about. If you're new here, my channel is about product development within the electronic, computer, and mechanical space, encouraging inexperienced tech users and makers to complete projects independently. If you have been enjoying or this is your first time here, please like, share, subscribe, and click the notification button for a continuous reminder of an upload. Soldering is one of those fundamental skills in electronics that involves joining metal items by melting and flowing a filled metal called solder. This process creates a permanent connection between electronic components, allowing electrical current to flow. Soldering is typically done using a soldering iron to heat the metal to be joined and then melting the solder into the connection. It is crucial for creating circuits on circuit boards and making electrical connections. When soldering electronics, it is essential to have the right equipment, including a soldering iron and other tools like wire cutters or a sponge for cleaning the iron tip. Proper safety measures should be followed, such as working in a well-ventilated area, wearing appropriate clothing, and other safety personal protective equipment, especially when handling circuit boards. The soldering iron is a hand tool that plugs into a standard 120-volt AC outlet and heats up in order to melt solder around electrical connections. This is one of the most important tools used in soldering, and it can come in a few variations such as a pin or gun form. Most soldering irons have interchangeable tips that can be used for different soldering applications. You will have to be very cautious when using any type of soldering iron because it can heat up to 896 degrees Fahrenheit, which is extremely hot. A soldering station is a more advanced version of the basic standalone soldering pin. If you are going to be doing a lot of soldering, then these are a great way to have as they offer more flexibility and control. Soldering irons come in different tip shapes and sizes. Each tip is used for a specific purpose and offers a distinct advantage over another. The most common tips you will use in electronic projects are the conical tips and the chisel tips. The conical tip is used for precision in electronics when soldering because of the fine tip. Because of the pointed end, it's able to deliver heat to smaller areas without affecting its surroundings. The chisel tip, this tip is well suited to soldering wires or other larger components because of its broad flat tip. To ensure successful solder joints, it is important to inspect them after soldering. A good joint will have a shiny finish with just enough solder for a strong connection. Avoid cold joints or excessive solder that can lead to weak connections or spills onto the other parts of the circuit board. Practice is key to mastering soldering skills. Start with simple projects and then move on to more complex circuits. Using a sponge will help to keep the soldering iron tip clean by removing the oxidation that forms around it. Tips with oxidation will tend to turn black and not accept solder as it did when it was new. You could use a conventional wet sponge, but this tends to shorten the lifespan of the tip due to expansion and contraction. Also, a wet sponge will drop the temperature of the tip temporarily when wiped. A better alternative to using a sponge is to use a brass sponge. What is being soldered here is the Adafruit TDK in Vincent. It has 9 axes of measurements. So that means it has 3 axes of gyroscope, 3 axes of accelerometer, and 3 axes of compass. This component will be utilized for the 4-axis robotic arm, so basically to help with the movement of the arms utilizing your hand. So we're going to connect this with an Arduino board and then check out how this will control the robotic arm. Here you will see my technician soldering another electronic component. This one is called the Adafruit 9 Degrees of Freedom. This component will also be utilized for the 4-axis robotic arm to test to see if we can control the robot by using your hand. This component being soldered is the FTDI232RL component. I can't seem to remember where I purchased this item from, but I know it was either from Amazon or one of those electronic website stores. If you have been following some of my other projects, such as the ESP32 camera, as you know, I have been having difficulty with getting the camera to show up on my computer. So I have this component here to help communicate to the ESP32 and to see whether or not my components are faulty, the ESP32 components. So hopefully with this device we can disconnect the ESP32 camera and connect it to this component here to test whether or not we can actually get the camera working. Thank you for following my journey of soldering some of my electrical components. I plan on using some of these components for the ESP32 camera and the 4-axis robotic arm, so stay tuned for future videos. Please write a comment below about your most recent soldering projects.